MPH Sports Podcast. Talk sport and property with sports people discussing their careers and how property played a part in it.
Jordan Cousins, welcome to Talk Sport and Property. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
How are you, mate?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Just got in from training and looking forward to having a quick word with you today.
How's life at Stoke?
Life is good. Floating around the nicer end of the league this season, so that's always good.
Fantastic. So, as you may know, this podcast is based on two halves. The first half will talk about your career, and the second half will talk about property. So we'll start with the first bit. 26 years of age, born in Greenwich, 245 games in professional football now, 8 goals. Where did it all start for you? You signed your first contract at Charlton Football Club, is that correct?
Yeah, joined Charlton at under 12 levels. Joined from Sunday League. I was literally just playing in the parks, and my dad, he really wanted me to be in an academy. So he was proper doing the old school, calling around academy managers, calling around the clubs. And Charlton were my local team at the time. And I had just literally finished a 1-week trial at Arsenal. So I think when my dad called Charlton at the time, they kind of thought, you know what, he's just been at Arsenal. Why don't you give him a little trial? That led to me having a 6-week trial at Charlton at the age of 12, and then on the 6th week of that trial I got signed, and then kind of the rest is history after that. So through the hard work and all the phone calls from my dad, I was able to have that chance at Charlton, and yeah, that's where kind of my journey started.
Well, looking at where you grew up, is Charlton, was it a club that you grew up supporting, was it?
I'm an Arsenal supporter. It wasn't the club I supported, but it was the closest club to my house where I grew up in Greenwich. It was literally 5 minutes from my house. To commute there was very easy for my parents. They worked at the time, so it was very convenient for them.
So I'd imagine, actually, thinking back, if it would have been a dream come true if that Arsenal trial would have gone to plan.
Yeah, it was a quick one. It was just a week. And you know what? I didn't even know I even had the trial at Arsenal. Like, my dad literally surprised me one evening and just drove me to this random place in East London, Hale End at the time. And he just kind of sprung it upon me. And it was a surprise at the time, but it was a great learning curve for me that week.
Yeah, super. And I guess that even after that first trial, whatever the outcome, it gave you a little bit of experience before you went into Charlton. So was you picked up as a midfielder, or did you play a different position as a child?
I was played everywhere, to be honest. Centre back. That's where I signed at Charlton as a centre back. Play centre back, right back, in midfield. On a few stinks on the wings. Probably the only place that I didn't play as a youngster was probably up front. So I was known as that versatile player in the academy system, and it probably benefited me, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was able to slot in different positions, which probably helped me progress going forward.
I suppose a lot of academies now, they try and build or create footballers, don't they? They don't just sort of set you in a position. So even now, I think you'll see many kids being picked up at such young ages, at sort of 5 and 6, and they don't necessarily think of you as a centre forward or a right back. They think of you as this player and give you these different options. You made your professional debut on the 6th of August 2013, 4-0 win against Oxford. Can you remember the day well?
Yeah, well, I was on the bench for that game, and I think we were about 2 or 3-0 up when I came on, and I think it was like maybe the 85th or 86th minute, and I actually won penalty in that game. It wasn't a very long debut. It was just like a little cameo, but I made an impact, won a penalty for the team, and that following Saturday, I made my debut, my full debut, coming on at half-time against Barnsley, and actually scored in that game. So I think, as much as I probably don't remember and don't tell people the story about the little cameo I had about Oxford, I think that was probably the big bit that kind of made the gaffer at the time, Chris Powell, put me on at half time, because he knew I could make an impact in the game. And obviously after that Barnsley goal at half time, that's where my career probably pushed on, and that's where it started. That's where it proper started. Yeah, no,
I agree. I really enjoyed looking over your career, particularly the early stages of it, where you did score your goal the following week on your debut. Did you score many goals as a kid coming through? Obviously, you're not notoriously known for your goal scoring ability, Jordan, and many other things you are. But for goals, eight goals in 245 games, is this something you've always put pressure on yourself for, or have you just accepted, actually, I take more responsibility in other areas of the pitch?
I think when I was younger, I was.
Yeah.
Most of my goals came when I was like playing at Charlton, and I was probably a bit more of a box-to-box midfielder.
Okay.
So I did put some pressure on myself then. But I think now, 26 and having all the experience that I have, I'm not really kind of fussed about the amount of goals that I get. I'm more of a team player now, you know, probably playing a bit more of a defensive role in midfield. So my contributions are much different. So reverting back to your question is, do I put pressure on myself? I wouldn't say I do as such.
No, good. Well, your efforts and early performances were obvious to Charlton because you attracted a new 3-year contract in October that year. Even in that same month, you won Young Player of the Month award. Did you find transition into the first team fairly comfortable? So how old were you back in 2013?
I would have just turned 19.
Right.
Just turned 19.
And did you feel that level up from maybe under 18s or under 23 football into the first team? Did you find that was quite an easy process for you?
No, I think for me personally, I was just in a bit of a bubble at the time. So I didn't really have time to kind of think. I was just so buzzing to be obviously living my dream of being a first team player and playing in the championship at the time. So for me, it was just, I didn't find it difficult per se, the transition. Maybe after like the first year, I started to find it a bit more difficult because obviously as going in as an academy player and an unknown academy player, you're not really picked up by the other team. So things are much easier. Whereas obviously I started making my name and other teams' opponents started to probably recognize what I could do. So it became a bit hard. So I had to kind of change my game up a bit and kind of elevate to obviously keep on churning out the performance that I was back in when I was first jumping into the first team. So it was a bit, I would say the second year was more difficult than the first year. Like I said, the other teams didn't really know me.
Jordan, you were called up by England at under 16, played all the way through to under 20 level with 34 appearances, scoring twice. When did you get discovered by the national team? And could you explain to us football fans, I guess, what that sort of process was? Do you get called up for a trial, or are you just part of a squad immediately and start playing competitively?
With England, I was in a bit of a different kind of situation because I actually got called up quite early. So I got called up at the age of, I think it was 15. I done the trials for the under 16, so I actually played a year up.
Wow.
And so it was in Burton. There's about 40 players went for a trial. I think that was I don't think they do it nowadays, but that was the process back then. We would go for a trial and it was like a 3-day camp. But I'm actually born in 1994 and I was doing it for the 93 age at the time. So yeah, you just literally do a 3-day camp and you do training and practice matches and you kind of just go back to your club. And then after that, I think that's in the summer. And then I think you're gearing towards what it's called. It's not, they don't do it anymore, but it's called the Victory Shield, which is televised in like the October and the November. And I was lucky enough to be selected for the Victory Shield squads. And then obviously that was probably one of the pinnacles at that time of my career because it was like the first time playing on Sky and things like that. So yeah, that was probably a very good experience for me at that age, probably leading forward.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Any other names you can mention that you were playing with at the time?
Who's playing now? Nick Powell, obviously I play with Nick now at Stoke. Nathan Redmond, Raheem Sterling. For the older age group who I started with, you have Ross Barkley, Daniel Chalobah plays for Watford, Jordan Pickford. There's a few. But you know what the funniest thing is? I was talking to Nick about it at football. The amount of players that were in them squads that aren't actually playing the game anymore. It was really sad to actually to talk about that with Nick at football the other week, because it's crazy how these are probably the most talented academy players at the time, at the age of 17 and 16. And just to ring through the names of players that actually aren't in the game anymore. Not even I'm not talking professionally, I'm just talking about just not even playing football at all. It's crazy, you know what I mean? So it just shows you that even at that age, and you're playing for England, there's still so much work.
There's no guaranteed future, is there?
You have to do, you know what I mean, to make it and have a successful career.
Well, you did have a successful career, but going back to Charlton, confidence, clearly remained with you and your manager, Chris Powell. You played 47 times during that first season, followed by another 42 the following season, actually. Got you a new improved contract, 4 years. Chris Powell, how important was he to you as a coach during your early years, Jordan?
Very, very important to me because he gave me the confidence. He gave me the foundations to kickstart my career. Do you know what I mean? He gave me the opportunity to live my dream and play played professional football. So he didn't really used to say much to me because I'm quite an introverted person. I'm quite a level-headed person. I'm not really out there. So I think he knew how to manage me. He just kind of let me go and play football. Do you know what I mean? I think that was the best thing for me at that time. So yeah, he definitely was a big key in my early days, in my early career.
The second season you were at Charlton, you experienced relegation. What does that experience give you as a player on your own individual journey?
It's tough. It is tough because that's something that I'd never obviously experienced before. But I think for me, I think as a person, I learn more through my failures than my successes. I think that was a great probably failure personally that I probably grew the most from, just because of the situation we was in. Obviously, we had been relegated. We were relegated quite early in the season, so we had maybe about 10 games to go. And I knew that at that time that, listen, if I wanted to remain in the Championship, probably get a move to another club, I had to, these 10 games were like gold dust. I had to.
Yeah, cup finals.
These were like the messages I was getting from my agent. So luckily enough for me, we had about 2 or 3 games on Sky. I was, lucky enough to perform at a high level. And obviously that got me my move that summer. But going back to the relegation, where I found it most tough was not even the playing side of it, but obviously seeing the people around the club that obviously aided my career and brought me through. Like it was tough times for them because a lot of people were losing their jobs and things like that. So I think that side of things resonated with me when it came to relegation. Obviously at the time I knew that I would probably going to get a move somewhere else, but I knew that I'd probably let a lot of people not just me, like the whole team had let people at the club down. People that had been there for years might have been losing their jobs. So that was the toughest bit for me personally, I think.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Obviously, that move did come for you, Jordan. Charlton accepted a bid from QPR over to West London. You felt that was the right move for you at the time?
Yeah, it was. It was because I knew I was confident in myself that I wanted to remain in the Championship. I felt like I could still deliver and perform at a high level in that league. So when the opportunity came to stay in the league and not obviously drop down to League One came, I was buzzing and I wanted to move across QPR. Also, it was London. I'm a London boy, so I knew I didn't have to pick up and move or go up north. So everything kind of worked out. It was tough to get out of Charlton. let's put it that way. It involved me having to go into the manager Russell Slade's office a couple of times to see like what's going on. Kind of, can you please accept the bid?
He was reluctant to let you go, was he?
Yeah, he was quite reluctant. He said no, just do another season. But I was like, Gaffer, please, you know what? I've trained hard. I've done my time here, and I just want to push on with my career. And eventually they let me go and sign for QPR.
Yeah, but I think that was the right decision. Clearly, you played 71 times at Queen's Park Rangers under 3 managers: Jimmy Floyd, Ian Holloway, Steve McLaren. 3 different coaches.
Yeah. 3 very different.
Was there a personal favourite?
So obviously Jimmy Floyd signed me. So I had a conversation with him on the phone before I signed, and everything was positive. But he was only at the club for maybe 2 months.
Because he came in from Burton, didn't he? He's done a great job at Burton from memory.
Yeah, so he obviously came up from League One and QPR saw that he could obviously manage
do a job.
Yeah. So they hired him. He signed me, but he wasn't there for long.
What are you thinking? You wanted to stay in the Championship. You get the club that you wanted. You stay in London. You've got Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank on the phone saying, "Come and join us." You're thinking, well, "This is great. It's all going well for me here." And then 2 months later, the coach who brings you in is telling you everything you want to hear, suddenly leaves. I mean, it must be a bit of a nightmare.
I think if it was my first time, it would have been a nightmare. But
okay.
I think I had about 8 or 9 different managers at Charlton. I was used to it.
Wow.
I was used to it. When I was back at Charlton, they were going through a takeover and we went through a whole load of different managers. So I kind of knew the process as such as when a manager gets sacked and things like that. So it wasn't too much of a shock when he got sacked. Obviously, we were drawing a lot of games at the time, and obviously our aim was to kind of be up and near the playoffs, and that wasn't happening. So the club at the time decided to relieve him of his duties, and then obviously Ian Holloway came in.
Let's talk about Ian before we move on to Steve.
A character, very he's a funny character. Let's just say on the first day of him coming into the club, he got everybody, and when I mean everybody, ground staff, receptionist, to watch Coach Carter. Yeah, that was the first afternoon of when he came in. Literally, everyone sat in the canteen.
That's brilliant.
And we watched Coach Carter. It was an experience, I tell you that.
He's a great man for football.
Out of the three, I wouldn't have said he was my favourite, but
Yeah.
it was definitely an experience having such an outspoken manager as of Ian Holloway.
From memory, Ian wasn't he a centre midfielder as well?
Yeah, he was. He played for
was he someone that you felt actually he could develop my game whilst he was here?
I hope every manager that I kind of have wants to do that. Some managers want to do it more than others. I didn't really know Ian Holloway as a player as such, so I didn't really kind of go to him for that kind of advice, if that makes sense. And also,
sure.
It's totally different to the game now. So, like I said before, certain managers are keen on it and they want to talk to players individually and develop their game. I didn't quite get that vibe from Ian Holloway. I got that more from Steve McLaren, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I've heard some fantastic things about Steve. Can you maybe a bit more detail about his coaching abilities?
Obviously, he was the ex-England manager, so everyone had heard about his coaching methods and things like that. Out of the three managers, I'd definitely say he was the one that I like the most. He played me the most, and he probably developed my game to a level where it probably I'd ever been. Do you know what I mean? He took the time out to have meetings with me and to tell me where I can improve my game. The first thing that I kind of realised that he'd done is when we went on tour to Portugal that summer, he had one-to-one meetings with everyone, which I felt was really good to kind of start a relationship with the players, which is something like I'd never experienced before myself personally.
Yeah, wow.
And just his level of coaching was very good. Like the sessions that he'd put out were very knowledgeable as well as fun. So everyone kind of enjoyed training. It was unfortunate to see him go towards the back end of my QPR career, but he did have an impact on my career for sure.
Yeah, great. Well, look, I mean, obviously you moved from QPR in June of 2019 to Stoke, where you remain. Was this a move you felt you wanted after parting ways with Rangers?
Yeah, I was at the stage of my, not just my career, but my life where I wanted some change. I had been in obviously with Charlton and with QPR in London for, I think it was 6 or 7 years I played professionally. And I just wanted a bit of change. Like I wanted to test myself. I wanted to move out of London, move out of my comfort zone and just experience something different. And when Stoke came along, I just thought that was the perfect opportunity for me to kind of test myself. And obviously speaking now, I've been at Stoke for nearly 2 years now. It's probably one of the best decisions I've made personally, just for my personal development as a person, because I've been through obviously the tough bits of moving away from family and loved ones. And I just feel like I've come out the other side mentally through this experience. So
I can imagine.
It was definitely the move that I wanted.
So what were the main differences you maybe sort of first noticed joining Stoke compared to maybe Charlton and Queen's Park Rangers?
First of all, the facilities. They're not long dropped out of the Premier League, so the facilities were second to none. I walked into the building and just small things like the gym. They have a pool, and the amount of staff they have. Like it was just another level. Do you know what I mean? And the club itself, like the staff that work for the club, they're like local people. So the love that you get, the warmth that you get just walking through the front door is amazing. And it's something that I'd probably hadn't experienced before. Do you know what I mean? Because don't get me wrong, at Charlton and QPR, they welcomed me with open arms, but this was just like a different kind of feeling, if that makes sense.
I think the facilities at both QPR and Charlton are fairly basic, aren't they? I mean, I've been to Charlton's training ground a few times. I've been to QPR's training ground a few times. I would imagine at Stoke, everything's just a higher grade.
Yeah, as I said, they just come out of the Premier League, so
sure.
And they had invested quite a few millions into the training ground, so the standard was a standard that I wasn't used to. So I just felt like it was a perfect opportunity for me to develop as a person and as a player. It's the perfect working environment for any player to develop, I guess.
Super. Right. Well, before we end the first half of the pod, we did reach out to social media. So we've got a combination of our questions and a few questions that some people have decided to ask you as well. So 10 quick questions before we move on to the property section. So number one, do you play any other sports?
Now I don't know, but when I was younger, it was a choice between cricket and football.
Right.
Yeah, I did have a good interest in football, but academy manager Steve Avery at the time wanted me to start training on Saturdays, and obviously there were the days that I played cricket, so I had to make a decision. And
We have to bear that in mind.
yeah, football was my dream. So yeah, cricket had to go on the back burner, unfortunately.
Yeah. Best career achievement, Jordan?
I'd say just being a professional footballer, to be honest.
Fair play.
That was my dream from when I started kicking balls about when I was 4 or 5 years old. So just to have the honor to kind of play the game, play it professionally, have it be my professional job, like that's got to be my greatest achievement.
The best match you've played in?
Last Boxing Day, we played Sheffield Wednesday. So it was Boxing Day 2019. And it was a crazy game. We actually played well in the game, but found ourselves 2-1 down in like the 9th, I think it was probably like the 89th minute. Tyrese Campbell came on, scored to make it 2-2. And then Sam Vokes, I think in the 95th minute, scored and we won the game 3-2. But obviously it's Boxing Day and you know what everyone's like on Boxing Day. The atmosphere was live. My family had come to watch as well. And it was such a surreal, like the way the goals went in and the emotions were just crazy. So that was one of the best games I'd had for sure.
We'll follow that question by, what's the worst match you've played in?
The worst game I've played in is probably at QPR. So we played Newcastle. I think it may have been on a Friday night. And this is when Newcastle had Rafa Benitez as manager and they were flying at the time. And yeah, we were playing on Sky and we got battered about 6-0, I think it was. But it was one of them games where
it was a game to forget.
Everything was going wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like it was, I just remember like John Joe Shelby being in the team and he was someone I looked up to being at Charlton. And he was just, when I say running the game, he was like just absolutely running the game. I could not get near him. Do you know what I mean? And it was live on Sky, so it was even worse. Do you know what I mean? You have everyone watching and just see you getting battered. But obviously they went up that season, so it was fully deserved. But that was just a bad night.
It wasn't the game you recorded then?
No, not at all.
The best goal you've scored?
It would have been at Charlton. So as I said at the beginning of the pod, I was quite versatile and I had a stint on left wing. So it was a time where we was playing against Wigan and I picked up the ball on the byline and I kind of cut in onto my right foot and kind of curled one into the top corner. And it was against Wigan at the time and the defender I took on was James Perch. For Newcastle. So obviously I signed for QPR and I used to just give it to him all the time. Do you know what I mean? We used to have a great bit of banter about the goal that I scored. So no, that was, definitely. I don't score much, but that one I definitely remember.
Remember that one. I'm not going to say who asked this question, but the best fans.
Best fans. That's a tough one, you know. That is a tough one.
You're going to get some stick from some people.
Yeah. You know what? I'd say Charlton and Stoke, but for two different reasons. I'd say Charlton because of the way they welcomed me into the first team and the way they made me feel comfortable.
Every club does love their own coming through from the academy, don't they?
I had that love, obviously, because I had come through the academy and the warmth they gave me was tremendous. But then, obviously, I'd say Stoke as well. But I say that in a different reason because obviously you have Stoke and there's not many clubs in and around Stoke. The love you get from everybody in the community is something that I'd probably never experienced before because you always had QPR and Charlton and they have other clubs around them. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Nobody, you'll walk around and nobody pretty much will know you. Do you know what I mean? They probably support bigger clubs like Arsenal and what so.
Yeah, I think Stoke are notoriously known as very sort of passionate fans, aren't they?
Exactly. So they show you love.
Ronaldo or Messi?
It's a tough one. I'd say personally Ronaldo because don't take this the wrong way, but I see myself more in Ronaldo than Messi, if that makes sense. The way he works, just the stuff he does, like all the 1% that he carries out, I have so much respect for that because I know how hard it is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You wake up and you go, wanna.
It'd be my choice as well. Yeah. The best player you played with, Jordan?
Oh, I'd probably say 3. Can I say 3 people?
You can.
I'd say Joe Gomez, Ebere Eze, who's now at Crystal Palace, and I'd say Adam Lookman, who's on loan.
Who was the last one, sorry?
Adam Lookman.
Yeah.
The one, he's on loan at Fulham right now and he's doing good stuff. And I'd say them because I played with them all at a very, very young age. So when they were probably coming through the academy. sometimes you train with people and you play with people and they take your breath back. They take your breath away. Do you know what I mean? They do certain things and you're thinking, no, like, how did he do that? And they do it continuously. And with all them 3 players, I had the same feeling. And not just along with their ability, I think their humility and their character. It gives me no surprise to see how well they're doing now, and for them all to be playing at the top level. Like Joe is won Champions Leagues. Do you know what I mean? He's won Premier League. Do you know what I mean? So it's crazy. And the other 2 are doing great stuff in the Premier League. So yeah, they're definitely I couldn't pick between them because, listen, they're all fantastic players. They're all fantastic.
Yeah, I know a few of the Crystal Palace first team players, and I can honestly say they've been really impressed by Eze joining the squad. His ability is clearly there to be seen. Lastly, your best property finder.
It's got to be MPH.
That's the answer we were looking for.
Listen, I'm a loyal person. I only have one. I only get properties from one person.
Let's wrap that one up. John, that was wicked.
Talk Sport and Property Podcast, sponsored by MPH Sports Property Academy. Download the app today from the App Store or Google Play by typing in MPH Sports, the trusted go-to app for sports people looking to buy or learn about property.
Jordan, we've worked together for about 2 years now. I think we've bought maybe 3 or 4 investments together. When did you first take an interest in property investment?
Probably from a very young age. I was always grew up to know how important it was to buy property for long term investment and to build wealth. But I never really I bought my first property when I was 19 going on 20, but I never really got involved into like the kind of buy to let, the trickier stuff until my mid-20s. So I'd always had a passion for it, but I think when I got into my 20s, I really wanted to kind of divulge into property, and I wanted to learn about it. So I started picking up books and started talking to people that I knew, that I played with, that had bought property, and it kind of, my love for it grew then.
Yeah, it kind of probably motivated to explore it further, didn't it? So when we started working together a couple of years ago, you were quite open. You mentioned that you'd set up a property company. I mean, who recommended you put that property company together?
My financial advisor, just purely because of the tax benefits. Obviously, if you buy a property, I think everybody will know, and you put it into your own name, us footballers are probably in the highest rate of tax. So if that property is bought in your own name, the tax you'll be paying on it will be the highest. Whereas if you put it into a limited company, then I think corporation tax is 19%. So just through the profits and the tax benefits, it works much better for you to create your own company. And it sounds good as well.
It does.
Yeah, it's nice.
Jordan, could you talk me through your first purchase? Where was it? Why did you buy it? How did you find it? Talk me through right from the beginning.
My first purchase was the flat that I grew up in.
Okay.
It wasn't an investment. It was just purely because I wanted to give back something to my mum. I wanted my mum to live an easy life. I wanted to help my mum. But funny enough, she opposed against it because my mum's very old school. I was contacting the council at the time because I wanted to buy the property off the council through the right to buy scheme, and she didn't want to. She was used to paying rent to the council for 24 years, and she didn't want to change. So it took some convincing for me to to get through to her. And now she thanks me every day because it was the best decision that I kind of made, because now she can live life very, very easy. And to be fair, the right to buy was probably the biggest lesson for me in terms of the equity you can make in property, because I actually got that property for a massive, massive discount. I bought that property on I think it's 150 grand mortgage in 2013, and that house is now valued at 400,000. So it's crazy, do you know what I mean? And obviously because my mum had been there 24 years, the council obviously give it a good discount because she had
well, she'd have been entitled to it, wouldn't she?
Exactly, she's paid big rent. So I wouldn't say that was my probably first investment property where I'd make money back from it, because I will never make money back from that property. But,
am I assuming that your mum's still there and that's the property that you've still got?
Exactly. Yeah, I've tried to get her out of it because I know if I rented that out, I could probably get good money for it. But obviously that's mum and I can't. Mum's, she deserves the world. So whatever she wants to do, if she wants to stay in it until she's not here, then that's what she's going to do.
Fair play, mate. When you moved to Stoke, obviously completely outside of London, out of your comfort zone you mentioned earlier, Did you decide to rent, or did you decide to buy, or did you maybe work with the player liaison team at Stoke and explore a few options?
My idea was always to rent, because I've purchased my main residence now in London. I've had that for nearly 3-4 years now, and I always know, regardless of where I go, I'm going to end up back in London. So even if I was to stay here for maybe 3-4 years, I'd still rent. You know what I mean? Because it gives me flexibility. It gives me flexibility to move around, and I always know that I'm going to be going back to my main residence, which I've invested heavily in. So my idea was always to rent and never to buy up north. Even though it is cheaper up north and you get more for your money, I just like the flexibility of renting.
Did you find many properties that were compatible for the budget and the price range that you were looking in?
The rent, yeah, it was where I live here in Cheshire. There were loads of places. I just needed a place for myself. I didn't need a big house or anything like that. I just needed something nice and modern that I could come home and rest my head on and could concentrate and play football. So I didn't need nothing special. Didn't need nothing big or massive. It was easy to just kind of go on Rightmove and.
So you did that yourself away from the club?
Yeah, I did it myself. I had a few pointers from the club. They sent me in a few directions to different estate agents, but I'm old enough to kind of go to viewings and liaise with estate agents and negotiate rents with people. So no, it was an easy job for me to do.
Yeah, good. Well, look, I'm interested to know more about your longer term property goals. Are you focused on building up a passive income after sport?
Yeah. That would probably say is the main reason to why I'm investing in property. Like I won't take any like dividends or any money out of my properties until I finish playing football.
Yeah.
Why I buy property now is purely not to make any money now. It's to kind of fund my life post football.
Jordan, you've always held fairly extensive knowledge about property. I've always enjoyed our chats, whether it's before training, after training. We talk about property sometimes for ages. Have you ever been tempted to go into more development opportunities where you can maybe add value to older properties and look at refinancing or possibly flipping?
Yeah, definitely. But I think just because of the type of person I am, I think I'd like to be more hands-on with that kind of stuff, where I can kind of be at properties, I can talk to site managers and listen, if anything goes wrong, I can be accessible. Whereas obviously now I have to kind of juggle my properties with playing football. So I can't really be there all the time. And I think when you're going into property development, unless you have massive trust in people and have a good network around you, it's tough. Do you know what I mean? It's tough.
I guess each process needs managing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But obviously, when you have to hire people to manage processes, that comes with a fee and a cost, and that cost obviously will take money out of your profit. So I think for me personally, where I'm going with like the buy to let stuff and being managed and focusing on like repaying the mortgages down as quickly as possible, which is my goal. I think if I ever do want to go into the development side of things, I'll have a very good foundation to then kind of go into that side of things post football. Yeah,
sure. This has been something that you and I have disagreed on in the past, where you've always been keen to pay off these buy-to-let mortgages, haven't you?
Yeah.
And I've always encouraged you to put them on interest only for tax reasons. Is it because you've had a financial advisor in your life now for so long that has always encouraged you just to leave sport as debt-free as possible? Or do you understand the benefits of sometimes embracing debt?
No. I definitely understand the other side of it. But me and my financial advisor, who I've had since I was 19.
I know your financial advisor well. He's a fantastic man.
Yeah, so when I had him from a very young age, we always had plans, obviously, going through from contract to contract, and we've just had his whole thing is retiring from football with no debt. When you have no debt in life, that means you don't have to answer to no one. You don't have to, you know what I mean? There's no chance of anyone coming to kind of take anything away from you. And they're the kind of principles I've kind of lived with. I've seen professionals that I've played with go down the kind of debt route and try and lean in on debt and buying properties with debt, and they've ended up in bad positions. And like I said, I've been with my financial advisor since I was 19 now. I can confidently say that the position he's put me in now with my properties and with my main residence, just through investing and repaying and, you know, taking chunks off of mortgages, like I'm seeing the starts of the rewards of kind of going through that method. So that's why I'm very strong with it. Do you know what I mean? Because fair enough, if I couldn't see the benefits of it, but I am actually seeing the benefits of it. If I like calculate just things like my net worth, it's growing. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, we have the conversations about obviously doing interest-only mortgages, but I also think that way of kind of going down it is for people that want income now. You go on an interest-only mortgage, so the mortgage payment is low, and you can kind of take the other percentage out and use that. Obviously, you can use that to invest in other things, but for me personally, I don't physically need any of the capital that I'm making from my buy-to-lets now. They'll just literally go straight towards the mortgage payments, and then I'll maybe top it up and overpay the 10% I can every year.
I don't think there's any right or wrong answer with this. I guess the way I see it is that the debt should come to me first before it goes to the bank. If I'm loaning my company money, then I want that money back out before it goes back to the bank. But I guess, your financial advisor has obviously told you or advised you another way. You also mentioned you're very strong-minded. I can categorically confirm that. I don't think I've ever met anyone so strong, opinionated or thorough with anything in my life. Have you ever had any sort of bad experiences in sort of buying or selling? I'm going to assume that you haven't, because of the way you are, the character of the person you always demonstrate to me. But I mean, even someone with your attention to detail, have you ever got it wrong?
I wouldn't say I've had any bad experiences, but just obviously the journey we've been on over the past 2-3 years. I bought my main residence back in 2017, and this was before I even knew you. The thing that I probably learned from that is I probably could have got my main residence for a lot less than I actually did, if that makes sense, because I didn't really know about negotiating. It was a new build at the time, and I didn't really haggle thoroughly on the price. And obviously me having the experiences that I have now, I really wish I had the knowledge I have now, because I truly believe that I probably could have got my main residence for a bit cheaper than I did at the time. But in terms of other experiences with my buy-to-lets, it's been pretty plain sailing, and I'll probably put parts of that for you, probably thank parts of that to you, to be fair. So.
Well, thank you for your compliments, Jordan. That does mean a lot, mate. I guess, look, the benefits of a property finder when we represent players when they look to buy homes is that we try and take the emotion out of it. We're all about the numbers. So we will research thoroughly and try and negotiate the best deal on your behalf. But I also want to remind you were 22, 23 at the time.
Yeah.
I think even exploring your end of career home at that age is a huge compliment. So can you share with us, how many properties do you now have, and is there a target in mind?
I have 6 now, but I wouldn't say there's a target in mind in terms of the numbers of properties I have. I'd say there's a yearly target of passive income that I would like to have at the end of my career. So yeah, I don't really focus on, like I said, the amount of properties I have as such. I have 6 now. I probably would like to purchase a couple more in my career, but along with, I don't just invest in property as well. I invest in stocks and shares and ETFs and stuff like that. So hopefully that could bring me some income as well. But my whole thing is, I don't want to be forced. I will work after football, but I don't want to be forced to work after football. So that's the whole reason I kind of dedicate lots of my time in learning about properties and learning about stocks and shares and how them kind of wealth building things work as such.
Yeah, I know when we've always spoken about your property plan, you also like to spread your risk a bit more with property, don't you? You don't like to keep too many properties in one area. Where are your 6 properties? I know you said you obviously got a couple in London, but...
So I've got 3 in London, 1 in Darlington, 1 in North Manchester, and the Redditch one, which is completing at the end of March. So yeah, that's half of Birmingham.
Most sports people that have experienced probably a salary at your level, Jordan, I would imagine have a financial advisor like you have in your life, just to sort of help control the finances and spread the risk a bit. What would you say the advantages are buying property over, say, stocks and shares like you mentioned before?
I'd say, for me personally, buying properties is easier to understand. And if you're not a player, say for instance, you're not earning that much money, you can get into property with low risk.
Sure.
And you could easily, it's not the way I would do it, but you could easily have an interest only mortgage. And if you needed the extra £200 or £300 a month, that's easily done. Do you know what I mean? And that you don't have to put too much capital into that. Whereas obviously stocks and shares are, for me personally, I invest into stocks and shares for the long term. So if you did need some short-term liquid, some short-term cash, then obviously it's a bit, your risk and reward levels go up with stocks and shares, because that's probably, you're more safe investing in them in the longer term rather than in property. You can, like I said, draw that cash as soon as you kind of have a tenant in there paying rent.
Yeah, no, I agree. You've always been very kind in referring MPH Sports to other footballers like you, Jordan. I've always been very grateful for that. What would you say to any player who might be a bit cautious in investing in property?
I've always personally found when I read or listen to audiobooks, it kind of lessens the risk. The more you understand something, for me personally, the more it kind of, like I said before, the risk element kind of goes down. Whereas this is not just with property, but this is with anything in life. And just talk to people that have been there and done it, and you've seen that are successful in it. That's what I've done. Like I'm a person that it doesn't matter who you are. I'll come up to you and ask you if you've got a large property portfolio, as a lot of players at Stoke do. I'll ask, do you know what I mean? I'll ask what's with commercial property? What's the difference? You know what I mean? I'll ask those questions. And again, going back to my first answer, just build your knowledge, read books, listen to podcasts, and listen to successful people that do it. And even for big thing for me as well, what I've done over the past year or so is that just the people that I follow on Instagram, because everyone's on Instagram, I'll follow lots of successful property developers and lots of inspirational people like Warren Buffett and Elon Musk, and do you know what I mean? Just because they're the things that you pick up on a daily basis as soon as you wake up, as soon as you go to bed. And if you've got people dropping gems and quotes, you know what I mean, scrolling through your phone, you're gonna pick up good stuff. You're gonna pick up the knowledge. So I'd say knowledge is key, and knowledge lessens the risk when it comes to divulging into property. Like ask people like yourself, do you know what I mean? Like you know firsthand that I ask loads of questions to you, and it can be random questions at 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock at night. Do you know what I mean? So
and we've had those calls.
Exactly. So for me, you lessen your risk via knowledge, and knowledge can come in different forms.
Yeah, I completely agree. You've actually been quite inspirational to people, to players actually you might not even know, but I've taken calls from people that you've driven to training from training, and those players have actually called in to say, look, Jordan's actually told me about this book. They've told me about you. I'm keen to know more. I have some money. I'm thinking about buying a property. I've said, look, you know, I agree. You know, everybody needs someone to look up to. Everybody needs someone to be inspired by. And I've always enjoyed our conversations. I've always enjoyed us going out for dinner at that time. You know, it's your turn to pay the bill on the next steak dinner, Jordan. But I've got to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed this pod. I've also enjoyed representing you for the past few years. No one is more professional in buying property than you, Jordan Cousins. That you have my word on. I've never known anyone to complete a form so quickly, respond to a message so quickly. You've been a dream to work for, a dream to represent, actually, and I'm hoping we can do plenty more together in the future.
Perfect. Thank you for your time, man. It's been a very nice therapeutic session. I've enjoyed it.
Good. Well, that was the whole point of it. Thanks for joining us on TalkSport and Property, Jordan. Good luck for the rest of the season, my man.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Ta-da, mate.
You've been listening to TalkSport and Property. Visit the App Store and download the MPH Sports app today, or keep up with us over on Instagram.